Stranger Things is this cool new sort of mystery, sci-fi, horror, drama type deal from Netflix. It's set in the 80s, and it borrows a lot from the films of that time, like E.T. and Alien. The story begins with the disappearance of a boy called Will from the town of Hawkins, Indiana, and the mystery quickly deepens with the appearance of a girl with psychic powers, a shadowy government agency, and a monster from another dimension. By the end of the season, Will is found, but there are still heaps of unresolved questions, like what's up with Hopper and the G-Man? What is the monster, and how does the Upside Down work? What happened to 11? And why did Nancy hook up with the douchebag Steve instead of the sensitive Jonathan? Was it the hair? It was probably the hair, but still, let's have a look at what happened in Stranger Things Season 1, beginning at the very beginning. In the 50s and 60s, the CIA conducted secret experiments in a program called MKUltra, using drugs like LSD to investigate mind control, brainwashing, and interrogation techniques, which is a real thing that happened, by the way. But in Stranger Things, some of these experiments take place at the Hawkins National Laboratory, led by a certain Dr. Brenner, and one of Brenner's subjects back in the day was a woman called Terry Ives. We learn that Terry was pregnant while she was being experimented on with drugs, so naturally her child was born with psychic powers, like telekinesis. Terry named the child Jane, but Jane was taken away from her by Brenner, who covered up the kidnapping, saying that Terry actually had a miscarriage. Terry tried to sue Brenner to get her daughter back, but these attempts failed, and Terry seems to have declined into a drugged-out stupor. Meanwhile, Jane grew up in the Hawkins lab, where she was tattooed with her new name, 11. 11 calls Dr. Brenner Papa, which might mean that Dr. Brenner lied and told Elle that he was her dad, or maybe he really is her dad. Maybe he had some relationship with Terry, we don't know. But in any case, Elle was treated cruelly at the lab. Brenner subjects her to lots of experiments, making her break things with her mind and perceive things from a distance. Sometimes he put 11 in a sensory deprivation tank where 11's able to psychically project herself into a weird dark void where she can interact with people who are far away. This is during the Cold War, so Brenner and his CIA buddies use her to spy on Russians. But also, in this darkness, 11 encounters a monster. The monster presumably isn't physically in this dark space, but is in its own dimension, the Upside Down, just as the Russian is in Russia and 11's in the tank. But by projecting herself through this dark space, 11 is able to reach across the dimensions, and under the orders of Brenner, she makes contact with the monster, somehow causing a tear in time and space, making a gate, a portal into the monster's dimension, allowing it to emerge into Hawkins. In the commotion, 11 escapes the lab by crawling through a drain pipe. Meanwhile, the monster starts to hunt animals and people in Hawkins. At the start of episode 1, it takes Will. So this kicks off the human drama of the story. We see Will's mother Joyce frantically trying to connect with her son, and Will's older brother Jonathan searching in his angst and alienation. We see the cop Jim Hopper still haunted by his daughter's death, and when 11 escapes from the lab, she groups up with Will's friends Mike and Lucas and Dustin, who teach her loyalty and normalcy and love. There's also Mike's sister Nancy, who's growing up, trying to work out who she is, discovering sex. Like when we first see Nancy, Dustin offers her some sausage and pepperoni pizza, which Nancy declines. This refusal to take the sausage kind of foreshadows her conflict over whether to sleep with her boyfriend Steve or to listen to her friend Barb and stay a virgin. Barb, for her part, dies and no one seems to care, but Steve gets a redemption of sorts after being an asshole early on. In the end, Nancy and Steve are together, but there's still a bit of a love triangle with Jonathan. So yeah, there's some interesting drama happening, but the really juicy mysteries surround the Upside Down. The Upside Down seems to be a sort of an alternate dimension. It has the same stuff in it as the real world, all the buildings and trees and cars of Hawkins are there, but everything's dark and dead and decayed, cold and empty. When stuff moves or changes in the real Hawkins, nothing seems to change or move in the Upside Down, so it's almost like this is a snapshot, a frozen moment in time. Perhaps of what Hawkins was like at the moment of contact when 11 touched the monster. Maybe it was at that moment that this whole dimension was created. Or maybe the Upside Down used to be alive and normal like Hawkins, but it was infected by this weird toxic growth we see in the Upside Down. There are vines or tentacles on the ground, slime on the walls, particles in the air. The gate seems to grow, and wherever the monster goes, slime spreads. Maybe this is like an interdimensional disease, spreading from parallel world to parallel world, infecting the multiverse. Or maybe this is a time travel thing. Maybe the Upside Down is the future of Hawkins. It's what it'll become after being infected by its own future. This is all wild speculation, but whatever the Upside Down is, it's clearly closely connected to Hawkins. The dimensions affect each other in lots of different ways. Activity in the Upside Down can cause electrical disturbance in Hawkins. Will and Joyce can even use lights to communicate, though we don't know how this works on Will's end. How can he even see the lights and letters from the Upside Down? Some people think this means Will has psychic powers like 11, which could maybe also explain this weird gate-like thing that Will seems to open, but the evidence is unclear. Anyway, the Upside Down can also affect Hawkins through magnetism. Apparently the gate has a strong electromagnetic field. And sound can cross the dimensions. Jono hears Nancy when she's in the Upside Down. The very walls in Hawkins can give way to the Upside Down, which allows the monster to enter. The monster, also called the Demogorgon, is a creature that kind of looks like a human but with long arms and 5 unfolding petals of teeth instead of a face. After 11 makes the gate, the monster is able to make small portals of its own, crossing into Hawkins to drag prey into the Upside Down. Like a shark, it's apparently drawn by blood. The monster hunts for food, but it also uses prey for other purposes. In episode 8, we see that Will has been stuck in some gross organic fleshy web like in Alien, with a slimy tentacle down his throat like a facehugger. Maybe, like in Alien, the creature uses human hosts to reproduce. Maybe the little slugs that emerge from the bodies of Barb and Will are little baby Demogorgons. Though that doesn't explain the hatched egg we see earlier on in the Upside Down. Maybe that's the egg that Monster hatched from, but if so, what laid the egg? It looks too big to come out of a Demogorgon. Also, the first time we see the monster, it looks like it's eating that same egg. So between the monster, the eggs, the facehugger tentacles, and the cough-up slugs, there must be some complex symbiotic life cycle happening here. There must be other creatures involved. Maybe there are big egg-laying slug queens or juvenile Demogorgons out there. Maybe this creature is an alien. Or maybe the monster is something more human. One popular theory is that the monster somehow represents 11's darker half, like maybe the monster is a psychic manifestation of her anger and fear and her suffering at the Hawkins lab, and that in that moment of contact when the gate was made, she brought the monster out of her subconsciousness and into the real world. Maybe that's what Elle means when she says, "I'm the monster." This idea could help explain some similarities between Elle and the monster. Like in episode 1, we see the monster open a lock without touching it, just as 11 locks a lock. The monster appears to have telekinetic abilities, just like Elle. Also, 11 seems to recognize a photo of Will without having met him before. Maybe she recognizes him because her other half, the monster, has abducted Will. When Elle defeats the monster, both she and the monster disappear, as though they kinda cancelled each other out. Maybe Elle and the monster merged back into one, the monster returning to its place in Elle's consciousness, maybe changing her for the worse. All that said, if Elle is the monster, how do we explain the complex biology of the Upside Down? Could that have possibly come from Elle's mind? Finally, it's very interesting that when Elle uses her powers, we see the same weird electrical effects that are associated with the Upside Down, so there's gotta be some link here. It's all very uncertain, but there are clearly strong connections between 11 and the monster and the Upside Down. At the end of Season 1, Elle and the monster disappear, Will comes home, and we get a 1 month later where everything seems calm and normal. The Byers have Christmas dinner, the boys play D&D, Steve and Nancy get John a camera to replace the one that Steve broke. All seems well, but we see some newspaper clippings that show that there's still a lot going on. Joyce has told the media about Brenner's experiments at the lab, leading to a massive investigation. The coroner who was involved in Will's fake body has been caught, and there's a shake-up among the state troopers who worked with Brenner's people to cover stuff up. It seems that the secrets of the Hawkins lab are being revealed to the world, but it may be that nothing comes of this because MKUltra was supposedly exposed before. But there are more cool details. The article quotes someone named Ives expressing disgust about the lab, which is weird because Becky Ives doesn't seem to believe any of this conspiracy stuff, and Terry Ives doesn't seem to speak. So what's going on? Is Terry talking again? Could she maybe have a reunion with her daughter, 11? Finally, the article mentions Brenner. Last we saw him, he was attacked by the monster, but this suggests that he survives, and comments from Brenner's actor and the Duffer brothers have all but confirmed that we will be seeing Brenner again. Which brings us to Season 2. Season 2 of Stranger Things is set for release in 2017, and there's already a lot of info out about it. The show's creators have said that the season will be like a sequel to the first. Apparently, it'll explore the repercussions of everything that happened last season, while also introducing new problems and questions. There are new characters, including Max and Billy and Roman. Max is a sort of a tomboy with a complicated history. Billy is her stepbrother, hyper-confident and violent, and Roman is an outsider with a rough past who seeks revenge for a great loss suffered at an early age. All these characters sound potentially interesting. It'll be cool to see how they fit in with the existing cast. Also, a teaser trailer for Season 2 has revealed 9 episode titles, which give tantalizing hints of what's to come. The first title, Mad Max, is evocative of the Mad Max movies, but probably refers to the character Max. The boy who came back to life has a Harry Potter vibe, but we know this refers to Will, just like on the newspaper. A lot of the other stuff could kind of mean anything, but the pumpkin patch could maybe be like a field of eggs like in Alien, the palace could be some kind of important base, the storm could be either a general metaphorical conflict or maybe more literally some kinda interdimensional upside-downy kinda storm. A pollywog is a tadpole, like the Pokemon, which could perhaps refer to these slugs, if they're like baby Demogorgons or something. The secret cabin sounds like a good place for 11 or someone to hide, and the brain could maybe refer to some kind of intelligence behind the creatures of the Upside Down, maybe some kind of hive mind shit. Finally, the lost brother might refer to a test subject like 11 who was taken away from their sibling. Maybe this is the great loss suffered by Roman. So there are a million cool new possibilities for Season 2 here, but let's also have a look at what might happen to the characters we already know and love. Season 1 ends with this creepy scene where Will coughs up a slug, just like the one that came out of Barb, and then Will seems to flicker for a moment into the Upside Down. Apparently, the Upside Down has done something bad to Will, and there are lots of different theories about what this may be. Since he got facehugger tentacled, some people think he's got monster eggs or monster slugs growing inside him, or even that he's turning into a monster. Another possibility is that his time in the Upside Down has given him some kind of power to see into that dimension, that he's connected somehow. But there are also questions about how this has affected Will as a person. Like, he's seen some shit, right? He struggled to survive in a nightmare bizarro world, hunted by a horrific monster, isolated from all he knows for a week at the age of, like, 12. That must have had an impact on him, surely, so Season 2 might explore this. But the character we really care about here is 11, right? When and how will she come back? We do know that she'll come back, if only because of those waffles Hopper leaves out for her. But what'll happen with her as a character? She's got this great identity conflict, where on one hand she wants to be pretty and she wants to be normal, while on the other hand she grew up as a government weapon and sees herself as a monster. This is why her relationship with Mike is so beautiful. He doesn't want her to wear a wig or be a weapon. He accepts her for who she is. But Elle still has a long way to go in working out her identity, and hopefully Season 2 will continue to explore this. There are also questions about her powers. We've seen Elle throw a van into an air, levitate people, smush people's brains, make a kid pee, project herself across space and dimensions, rip holes in space-time itself. What else might she be capable of? We got a taste of her greater power in her confrontation with the monster. Her eyes go kinda red and she goes all Super Saiyan on the monster's ass. There are lots of parallels here with the Marvel Comics character Jean Grey, who transforms into a massively powerful psychic being called Dark Phoenix. The comic in which this happens, X-Men number 134, is specifically referenced in Stranger Things by Dustin and Will. So maybe, as with Jean Grey, we'll see a wilder, much more destructive side to 11 in Season 2. Another great character is Hopper. Season 1 explored his grief over the death of his daughter Sarah, and we see his memories of her driving him in the search for Will. It seems like he still needs some closure here, and there are hints that there might be more to reveal about Sarah's death. Hopper's actor described it as a secret in a recent AMA. Some fans speculate that Sarah might have had powers like Elle. There are also questions about Hopper's connections to Brenner and the government men. In Episode 8, we see Hopper get in a black government car. What's he up to? We know that earlier in the episode, Hopper made a deal with Dr. Brenner. Brenner let Hop and Joyce through the gate, and in return, Hop gave Brenner... what? The likely answer is that Hop told Brenner where to find Mike and Elle. That's how Brenner knew to come to the high school gym. You can argue that that was the right strategic move. Will's life was at stake, and 11 can protect herself, but still, Hop totally betrayed them. If Joyce and the boys find out, we could have problems. Finally, it'd be great to find out more about Brenner and the lab and the government men, the bad men. We don't even know what to call these guys because we really don't know who they are. Hop suggests the CIA, the NSA, Department of Energy, others say they're military. We know they're working with the state troopers, but yeah, it's really unclear who these guys are. We've seen them do some really extreme shit. They murdered Benny and made it look like a suicide, they drugged and bugged Hop, they moved Barb's car to make it look like she ran away, and they made a lifelike fake corpse of a dead child. They listen in on everyone's phone calls, and they use these Hawkins Power and Light guys to spy. Whoever they are, these guys have heaps of resources and are ruthless in pursuing their goals. But what are their goals? Clearly they're interested in Eleven's psychic powers, but there must be more to it. Why was Brenner so keen to get El to make contact with the monster? What do they know about the Upside Down? Who else might they have experimented on? If 11 is the 11th subject, are there 10 or more other subjects out there? The Duffers have promised a lot more backstory about Brenner and 11 and all that, so it'll be awesome to dig deeper into that history. So basically, Season 1 of Stranger Things was pretty bloody great, and the sequel Season 2 is looking pretty good too. What questions would you like to see answered next season, and what do you want to see next from Alt-Shift-X? Remember to like and subscribe, and check out our Game of Thrones videos if you can. Thanks to the patrons who support this channel on Patreon, including the Steve franchise, Stephanie Nasty, Philip Bond, Jacob Sachs, Rourke McLaren, Jennifer Himmelnick, VJ Singh, Benjamin Noggle, Helgia SK, Ali and Bill Quinn, and RIP Bosman Bonus Bits. Cheers.